Good morning, everybody, or I guess hello, because I never know what time you're listening to this. I'm Steph, the Pro Dog Mom. Welcome back to another episode of the Pup and Away podcast. I'm a certified dog trainer, canine behaviorist, canine nutritionist, and the very proud owner of Pup and Away in San Antonio, Texas, where we specialize in pet care with a behavioral edge. It's all kinds of socialization, boarding, training, you name it, we do it and have a lot of fun with it. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Cliff, who's very interesting and well-rounded in a lot of different things. He also runs his own podcast as well, and I've obviously been taking a deep dive into that and having fun listening to your episodes, Dr. Cliff. So thank you for being with us this morning, and tell us a little bit about you. What makes you Dr. Cliff?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It'll take a long time, I guess. I guess I'll give you the Cliff's notes. Do you guys have Cliff notes?
Yeah, I mean, I did, yeah.
Yeah,
Heck yeah. Very important.
but I am a veterinarian just outside of Toronto. I live in Toronto, and my clinic, Wellington Vet Hospital, which is a cat and dog clinic, is just north of us. I have owned it for 25 years. I graduated in '98. Yeah, I'm very, very excited. I started pretty young with everything in my life, kids, marriage, et cetera, et cetera. At least marriage number one, we'll say. We were very young. I love my ex very much. And I guess the fun part is I started traveling and volunteering. The joke is it was a midlife crisis. That might be partially true. Started traveling and volunteering around the world about 9 years ago, and have been to started out in the West Indies, which is pretty close, but then went as far as India and Ukraine and the Arctic North in January when it's minus 40 and there's almost no sunlight or daylight. Yeah, and I do some wildlife work now, as well as cats and dogs. And this morning I just did some cold water surfing in Lake Ontario. It's very rare to have waves that are surfable in the summer. So yeah, I'm a bit of a dichotomy, a lot of things going on in my brain.
That's really cool. Yeah. So it's just whenever I listen to your podcast, you're always doing something a little bit different, which is really awesome. You're connecting with a bunch of different people. I think sometimes even recording in some of those remote locations or trying to record in those remote locations, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. And, my podcast, Vet Life, it's called, I kind of talk about how the life of a vet isn't just about being a veterinarian. So we do have human health experts on,
Hmm.
as far as being a vet, to avoid burnout, you got to stay in shape and have good nutrition and good supplementation and things like that. So I talk a little bit about everything. So.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that because when I was introduced to you, I of course went and wanted to listen to some podcasts. And as I was scrolling through, I just kind of wanted to I'm reading headlines and titles and trying to figure out where should I start. And my thumb accidentally just hits on the one where I forgot the guest name, but you're talking about how you naturally lowered your cholesterol,
Hmm.
which is a very interesting one for me to start on because I was like, this isn't about dogs and cats. But it was interesting because I also just took that journey myself recently. My doctor was like, hey, your cholesterol's getting kind of high. Let's put you on some medication. And I said, no, no, no. Let me try a couple different things first. I was able to get my numbers lowered, but we're still not at perfect. So listening to that podcast, I was able to pick up a couple more tricks to try out first. So first of all, I want to thank you for that episode because it was very well received.
Yeah, yeah. His name is Igor Klebanov.
Igor.
I've known Igor for, 20 years probably. And he's a personal trainer and author. He's probably written, I don't know, 13 books or some crazy number. And while I'm not against medication, be it for myself or my patients, if I can do things with just nutritional changes and lifestyle changes and herbal supplements, I'm going to give it a try. When it came to my cholesterol, it wasn't really high, but it was starting to creep up, and I do have heart disease in my family. And I'm a vegetarian. I don't eat meat. I guess I'm a pescatarian. I eat fish.
Okay.
But it was still climbing, partially due to genetics, and so I just wanted to jump on it quick. And I actually had a conversation with my doctor, who was very, she was like, well, the numbers show that if you don't get it down, in
Hmm.
percentage, whatever, And I said, all right, I'll make you a deal. If I don't drop it by whatever number, when I see you in 6 months, then I'll go on the statins.
Mm-hmm.
She seemed surprised. Well, she was definitely surprised, but she seemed disappointed when
She's like,
"Look,
dang it, it
you really
worked.
didn't go on these drugs, did you?" And I'm like, no, I didn't want to go on. No, I'll go on if I need to. I want to live a long time. But
Right.
everything I did was backed by research, all that metadata, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm feeling good.
Good. That's awesome. Congrats. And yeah,
Thanks.
I think it's an important conversation. And sometimes I get frustrated with, as a human, my medical care, because a lot of doctors just want to prescribe the pill. But you guys brought up something very interesting in the podcast, in the sense that the majority of people that those doctors are seeing, they don't have the patient who wants to try the other things, right? They have the patient that they want the quick fix. They don't want to change their diet and their lifestyle. So that's just kind of their go-to, I think, at some points. So
Yeah,
that kind of led me. Oh, sorry. Go for it.
I'm a good patient in the sense of I take my healthcare very seriously, and I've had a lot of injuries from sports. I've done a lot of aggressive sort of combat sports and
Mm,
contact sports over the years, and still do. And if I go to the physiotherapist and they say do this, 3 to 5 reps, 3 to 4 sets every day, well, I'm doing the max. I'm doing 5 reps. I'm doing 4 sets, and I'm not
yeah,
like I take it very, very seriously.
you
So
know how to do your homework.
yeah, that with everything, fasting and again supplementation and just being careful with what I eat and what I do.
That's awesome. So I think that kind of led me to one of my first questions about you, and kind of learning and discovering you've, kind of for the first time. How do you consider, like, when you're in your veterinary practice, how do you kind of consider yourself? Are you more conventional, integrative? Like, how do you fall? Because I feel like it's a spectrum, right? How do you fall along that
Yeah,
spectrum?
and I'm definitely, I would say I'm 90% sort of traditional. I guess we'd call it Western medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Vaccines and drugs and whatnot. My big thing is I am very supportive when people want to try things that are, we'll call it alternative.
Okay.
Uh, a great example is I have a few patients that are epileptic that are having seizures. They're on the appropriate drugs, and our control still isn't 100%. And so the owners are asking about CBD oil,
Mm-hmm.
and they look. I don't sell it myself because the studies aren't there yet. However, there are studies going out in the University of Colorado
Mm-hmm.
that are showing there's probably going to be some very good benefits with CBD oil as a complement to these pharmaceuticals. So here's some places you can get it. Here are the dosages, and let's give it a try. There's a lot of, if it's anecdotal, I'll make sure it's not dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll say yes, give it a try, but I won't provide it myself. Whereas if there's a product like, say,
Mm-hmm.
milk thistle has gone through all the placebo, double blinded control studies to show that it is very effective in detoxing the liver and helping with overall liver health. So we carry it in our practice, though it usually comes with a drug called SAMI, S-adenosylmyethin.
Okay.
Uh, and sometimes that drug combo, especially for the really, really big dogs, it gets really expensive. So
Sure.
I say, here's the dosage. Go to your local like health food store. You can get milk thistle for people. You can use it for your dog. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll use things that are proven, and then if it's anecdotal and it seems like it's going to be working, I'll support it. But I also have like I recently had a conversation with a veterinarian who's a holistic veterinarian, and I'm very supportive of that. My concern with him was he was prescribing oxygenated shampoo
Mm.
dog that had a MRSA infection on the skin, methicillin resistant Staph aureus. He didn't want to do antibiotics. That was not a time to be messing around. That dog had such a severe infection. It
Right.
needed antibiotics. And on top of that, I said to him, there's no studies showing that this oxygenated shampoo even works. He sent me some studies, which were not studies, they were just articles, and they were on people. And I
Mm.
had to say, when it comes to the skin, dogs and people are so different. Liver the same, heart the same, kidneys the same. There are so many of our organs that are similar, but not when it comes to skin. So there's kind of stuff like that. So I am flexible, I'm supportive, but I also don't put up with what I think is just sort of silliness.
Yeah, yeah, and I appreciate that. I think that's been a not a contact, but like a point of friction, I think, for me in my conversations that I've had with my conventional veterinarians. Actually, even with my integrated veterinarian, she was very against me. I feed my dogs a raw diet.
Mm.
And she was very against me doing that, and she didn't come at it from a place of like education. It was really more of a place of like, you're dumb for listening to other people that are not a vet. And I was like, that's not the right way to educate people. Like, if you
Yeah.
want to, share your knowledge, you got to do it kind of, in the right way. And she did consider herself an integrative vet. She does acupuncture, chiropractor, water therapy, and she has a little bit of traditional Chinese veterinary medicine education. And I was like, I just don't understand it. And she was also, there was a couple things, and I'm not going to get all the way into that, but I found a conventional vet that I was able to work with for a couple of things recently. I have a almost 16-year-old Schnauzer, and so going to the vet on a regular basis, I think for me is kind of important because he's going through a lot of physical changes with arthritis and different things like that. And my favorite integrative vet, I'm in San Antonio, so they live in Austin, so it's about a 2-hour drive for me. So I have to have someone kind of local. But I was very thankful because I found a conventional vet who, when I asked her about specific things, she kind of like not stayed in her lane, because that's a really rude way to say it, but she was able to answer the question and not like veer off course to start judging me about other things. And she was also very open-minded to me trying other alternative, I like to say traditional, but to each their own, ways of, kind of dealing with Sully's arthritis. So, I have been able to keep him off of the Librela and all those other things just by, kind of addressing things, mostly through CBD, so which was very interesting. So I'm happy that you're, I think it's a conversation in both directions, right? I think it's very hard for everyone to be fully aware of all the new studies that's being proven, because studies, they're going to be both, they're going to prove both sides of it. And so someone like you, who's not only a veterinarian but traveling the world, I bet it's really hard to kind of keep up with all of the studies and the knowledge and the nuances there.
Yeah, yeah, there's way too much information, and any veterinarian that sort of acts as if they know the answers to everything, um, it's just ego getting in the way. They don't know the answer. And I understand that one veterinarian's thought of, well, why would you listen to that person and not listen to me? But it's the way they deliver the message. And the reality is if you're my client and you bring me your dog and you want to try these things, or you have some lifestyle, options with your dog that I may not be 100% supportive of, if I don't have that conversation openly and honestly with you and with respect,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm going to lose you as a client, but more importantly, maybe the care for your dog is not going to be as good.
Mm.
And when people feel like they're doing what's right for their dog, unless it's like ridiculously obvious that this is not a good idea, if you don't work with them, then that the patient is what ends up suffering,
Yeah.
because just shuts down, understandably, and doesn't want to listen to the veterinarian because the veterinarian is not giving them the respect they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
I have, it's like a pet coming in that's obese. You know,
Yeah.
I'll talk to them about it and I'll help them. And if they're not able to if they're not willing to get their dog to lose weight, I don't just keep embarrassing them about it. I just
Right.
we give them extra big hugs. Like. Yeah, we're here to be a member of the team with the pet owner.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a
Yeah.
lot of it is.
I love that. Cool. You mentioned that you have owned your own vet clinic for, you said 20, 25 years?
5 years, yeah.
5 years. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Another episode that I heard was with you and your friend Jessica when you guys talked about the corporatization of the vet care industry, which I think is it's something that's obviously happening. So tell us a little bit about, number one, because I mean, there's lots of different ways that we can take this. I'm also a small business owner. I've owned my company since 2016, so almost 10 years. And it's morphed into many different things, and now we're finally in a brick and mortar, and I think this is where, Pup Pup is just going to finish growing and being, it's now its home. But I also get hit up with like, hey, we have this investor who wants to buy out your company, and I'm like, I'm not ready yet. And maybe one day, but I also am very hesitant to do that because there's a lot of different things that happen once a company now belongs to a corporation. So tell me a little bit about like your choice to own your own practice and then to continue owning your own practice, I guess.
Yeah, it is a trend that is no longer a trend. Like it's here to stay. Started in the U.S., moved to Canada, and that was just because the numbers are greater in the U.S. So as a corporate business, they're able to sort of get a foothold in the U.S. much easier than in Canada. But about 50% of clinics now in a city like Toronto are owned by corporations. And there's all these different reasons. The big one is a lot of veterinarians are reaching that age of retirement. And most of the young vets don't want to own and or can't afford to own that clinic anymore because like my clinic started out, as barely a one vet clinic when I bought it. And now we're three veterinarians. And, it would be tough for a single veterinarian to buy me out. Certainly if they're young, right? Where are they going to get the money? And then these corporations are offering just ridiculous amounts, like 2 times, 3 times what a clinic is really worth because they're looking 20 years down the road, right? So I understand why a veterinarian takes it, especially when they're ready to retire.
Yeah.
The issue with me, and I was flirting with the idea, I have to be honest with you, during the pandemic, I was approached and by multiple companies and there was a bidding war and they were offering me, again, 2.5 times what I thought I'd get for my clinic. At the time, my mom was going through some big financial problems. I needed to buy her a place to live, and carrying that mortgage has been very difficult. But I just made the decision that I'm not ready yet to work for somebody else. I'm only in my early 50s. And that money, maybe not the same amount, but still a very good amount will be available to me 10 years from now, let's say, or 15 years from now. Mm-hmm. So I chose just because I'm not yet ready to retire. It's very unusual. I graduated when I was 24. I bought my clinic when I was 26. Wow. Like that's very unusual. And I don't have partners. I started my kids early. All my kids are out of the house. I'm just now getting the time to work. I'm working more and loving my job more now than 10 years ago when I had 3 kids to take care of, along with my wife, helping me or helping us. So I just don't want to work for anybody else. And there are problems. We are seeing big problems with corporations buying the clinics and then the owner leaving after a year or two because that's what their contract says, and they go to retire. And all of a sudden changes happen and can't hold on to veterinarians. And now they can't hold on to technicians. And now the services decrease, the hours decrease, clients get upset. I see probably half of my new clients every month are from the clinic down the street that went corporate 3 years ago, and now the owner's gone. And they call up and they literally say, who owns it? Are they Canadian? Because there's a bit of a Canada-US thing going on right now, as you know, elbows up. Are they Canadian? And does he or she work at the clinic? Like, they
all the questions to ask now.
Yeah, they want to occasionally see the owner, just in case, And luckily, my staff is able to say, sort of yes to all those things. So It's a lifestyle choice. For me, I could make a lot more money if I sold. And although my hours would be decreased, my stress would not be decreased. It would be a lot higher, and I wouldn't be able to volunteer and travel the way I do. So,
Yeah.
my lifestyle.
That's awesome. Yeah, and kudos to you for. I mean, don't get me wrong. You said in your podcast episode, and I agree with this. If someone were to offer me a large amount of money with enough zeros behind it and enough commas, I would probably also say yes.
I love my house.
Yeah,
It's worth
I like nice things. I want to travel, right? I want to do all those things.
million, I think, here, which Canadian dollars is not a lot. 1.2 million. If someone came and offered me three, we're moving. We're packing.
We're going.
We're going. See you later. But I mean, that's a little bit different. So I don't know. I mean, right now I'm happy. I'm happy owning. I might be one of the few vets that loves owning a clinic as much as taking care of the animals. I
Yeah.
love my team. I love building stuff. I love being able to be flexible with sort of client situations. Yeah, it's too much fun to give it up.
I agree. I mean, don't get me wrong. The stress for sure is there. Some days, I feel like the sky is falling down. For me, staffing has been my biggest hiccup as far as being a business owner, finding the right people, enough people, educating them and training them the right way, and then keeping them. Because in the pet care industry, that's not quite vet. The pay, at least here in the US, is not as high as it should be. It's a lot of hard work, but the starting pay rate in this industry, especially in Texas, is just, kind of on the low side. So my staff is doing a lot of hard work for not that much pay, or at least, in my opinion, I feel like, they should be paid more. We should be paid more. And so there's just a lot of heartaches that go around with it. But at the end of it, and sometimes I'm like, why do I do this? Like, why do I put myself through all of this stress? But at the end of the day, it's kind of exactly what you said. I don't want to work for anybody else. I know that, I mean, I feel like the decisions that I make, not only for my team, for my staff, for the dogs that I'm caring for, it comes from a place of love and education. And I don't want to see that diminish or kind of, just go away by some corporation who might not have that much attention to detail on like the cellular and molecular level of what a business is. They're kind of more focused on the profit and the loss aspect of it, at least from the small amount of information that I've been able to gather by listening to other people who have worked in places that were once privately owned and now corporate owned.
Yeah, yeah, definitely the situation. I mean, you and I are blessed that our small business is not just a business. We're not selling tiddlywinks or fancy purses or something. We are selling care for pets,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, in one side, obviously, mine is medical and surgical, and yours is nutritional and supplemental and things of that nature. We get to leave our job at the end of the day, or at least this is what I do. I leave my job at the end of the day and I will quickly kind of scan all the patients in my brain that I saw that day. And wow, they all left the clinic in a better place, even if it means euthanasia. They were leaving, no more pain, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Uh, so you and I are very lucky because there is an emotional attachment. And although that makes it harder for us to then hand the reins over and with this big paycheck potentially selling to a company, to investors, it feeds the soul, it feeds the heart a whole lot more. And there'll be times to do that later on in life.
I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, I completely agree. Could not have said that better myself. Now, Dr. Cliff, I'm pretty sure you don't know this about me because you probably have not listened to as many of my episodes as I have of yours. But when I was growing up, I also wanted to be a vet, and so I was very much, I'm going to be a vet. I'm going to be a vet. That was the only thing that I knew in the pet care industry that you can do with, in my opinion, what I really wanted to work with was dogs. So I went to A&M, which is one of the best schools here in the United States to go to vet school. I made it all the way through my end of my sophomore year, and I realized that I was really struggling with chemistry and that my GPA was just not high enough for me to get into vet school. So I obviously pivoted in a bunch of different ways. But I missed out on my opportunity to go to vet school, and I think that would have been so much fun. But tell me a little bit about like, because there's so much information that I hear that kind of not demonizes vet school, but they talk about, well, a lot of their education comes from the food corporations. A lot of their education comes from the pharmaceutical reps and things like that. And I'm sure every vet school is different, obviously, who their sponsors are, who the people that they are inviting to educate their students and whatnot. So can you kind of give me a little bit of information as like what your vet education kind of looked like? Obviously, you had courses and things like that, but did you feel a lot of I guess influence from some of these dog food companies or pharmaceutical companies?
Yeah, I didn't. First of all, it was a very long time ago. It was 27 years ago, 28 years ago when I graduated. So, I mean,
Okay.
I vet school in 93.
Okay.
Cannot speak about what it is like now. I didn't feel like there was any sort of manipulation or crossover. University of Guelph is one of the best veterinary schools in the world.
Mm. Uh-oh.
Whoops. Look at that. Probably top five in the world. And everything was science based. Everything was, again, the double blinded, placebo controlled studies.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, we didn't get much of a nutrition conversation. Um, and similar to human medical school, there's not much of that at all. And as far as pharmaceuticals, I mean, if the studies are there, the studies are there. That's sort of the simple fact. That's the way I look at it. Everything's got to be sort of science based or facts based. I like to say that the facts have no, they don't care about your opinion. You
Yeah, they're
know,
impartial. Yeah.
yeah, they're impartial. They're biased. Now, I can't speak about where the professors got their data from, and et cetera, et cetera. But I do think the care that we give our pets, and same thing with the care that we give our people, um, are better now than it was 50 years ago. That's simple fact. Animals are living longer. People are living longer. Does that mean that there are not improvements? There are definitely improvements that can be made. There's definitely a weakness both in animal and in human medicine regarding, or human health, let's say, and animal health regarding nutrition, regarding lifestyle. Just the simple fact of weight loss, how important weight loss and getting rid of processed sugars in your
Hmm.
diet can make such a huge difference. But I do not feel like there's any sort of significant manipulation. I'm sure there's some people that will say I'm being naive. I don't know what to tell you. I just do what I can, and again, if I'm gonna respect them and sort of communicate with them and support them in some of their decisions, as long as their decisions to take care of their pets aren't sort of ridiculous or obviously causing harm, they need to also trust me. And then we work together, and I try not to get too worked up about it.
I hear you for sure. Well said. You kind of mentioned that nutrition was something that you kind of I don't want to put words in your mouth, but and correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of was a component that was a little bit lacking in
Mm.
your education, right? And I think that's it's a when you're learning to be a vet and we're learning to be a doctor, again, I'm just guessing because I didn't do either one of those things, but there's so much to learn in the general sense, especially you being a vet, you're learning about dogs, cats, all kinds of different animals, I'm sure. And so the education, the curriculum load is just so heavy that, of course, you can't become specialized in all these little things. For me, again, not a vet, never claimed to be. I'm first and foremost a trainer and a behaviorist. That's kind of the love that I found when I realized that vet school was not in my future. I found more of the training aspect, and I've been training dogs since 2013 and loving it. So first and foremost, I'm more on the behavioral side of everything. But as I learn more things, and mostly because I'm learning more things because of my dogs, I don't know if you can see Sully, he's just kind of hanging out back there. My
Chilling out.
brilliant Nelsa, just chilling. This is kind of how I found different things that I was more interested in and learning more about nutrition and how nutrition can affect behavior and, just physical health and also how physical health can then obviously affect behavior as well. What were some of those like nooks and crannies, the new little specialties the education that you didn't get from vet school that as you were practicing, you found a love for and wanted to dive into more?
Yeah, that's a great question, and definitely the big problem is the knowledge load or the
Mm,
information load. And we do talk about veterinarians being jack of all trades, masters of none. You can't go to your family doctor, and your family doctor is not going to look at X-rays. They're not going
exactly.
to talk to you about your skin issue. They're not going to do biopsies. They're not going to do surgery. They're not going to do emergency medicine. So there's a difficulty in that, and I think it's important for veterinarians, young veterinarians, as they graduate, to eventually, once they get their foundation strong, to eventually look at what they're attracted to or interested in, and become more specialized or become more interested in and more knowledgeable about that. For me, a big thing was dental surgery.
Mm,
It was dental health is a big problem in dogs and cats, and a lot of veterinarians are not comfortable doing certain types of extractions, certain types of procedures. So that was something I took into. Um, I guess the wildlife was a big one. I really, really wanted to be. I wanted to treat exotic animals as well as cats and dogs, and it just didn't work out with my first boss and my second clinic that I worked at. And then when I bought the clinic, it was only cats and dogs, et cetera, et cetera. But being able to do the wildlife volunteer work that I do once a week now for the last 7 years, which was only supposed to be 6 months of volunteer work, and I fell in love with it. That's been a big thing for me, and there's still so much more to learn, right? Like, I've just scratched the surface on wildlife medicine and wildlife surgery, and I'll never get to the bottom of it, which is kind of cool.
yeah.
About my industry is there's always more to learn, but it can be overwhelming. So yeah, you just have to sort of find what where there's a need, where there's a desire, both from the pet owner and from the veterinarian as well, and go from there. Yeah, I don't know if I hope that answered the question.
Heck yeah, it was whatever felt good to you to say at that moment because yeah,
Yeah,
like us being the privately owned small business owners, we obviously have that passion that we put forward first, but sometimes to kind of just relieve that stress, I think we find these little tiny nooks and crannies of education that just also call for our passion, that maybe may not have like a place in our actual business sense, but sometimes it does, and that's amazing. Because obviously, if we're passionate about it, it's going to be something kind of aligned with our first passion, which is the dogs and the cats, and for me, training stuff, for you, veterinary stuff. So it's cool that you found a way to still help a large amount of animals that are cool and fun and exotic, and just finding something different. I think sometimes too, to just continue to kind of fill that cup for you as a small business owner. Do you consider yourself a small business owner, medium business owner?
oh, it would be considered small. I
Small.
mean,
Okay.
I think in Canada they consider small business is when the revenue is like 10 million and under.
Oh,
So
okay.
very
You have some room to grow then.
I'm very much a small business. Then medium is up to from 10 million up to like 100 million or something. I don't know.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm a small business. It's like 2,600 square feet. My clinic.
Okay.
Uh, I'm nowhere near the biggest clinic in my
In your
city,
area.
let
Okay.
alone yeah, area, let alone anything else. So
Cool. I have one other question that I have for you about just kind of your opinion on something as a conventional vet. And I don't mean that with any sort of disrespect, but I think you also consider yourself a traditional conventional vet. How do you feel about titer testing?
yeah, that was a great question. You had mentioned that on an email. So titers are fantastic. The issue is they're very expensive.
Yes.
Very expensive, and they don't. Well, let me back up. So, for example, I use titers for myself
Okay.
I got a rabies vaccine, the 3 vaccines back in '93, and the way the protocol is for humans, at least in Canada, is you do not need a booster until your antibodies drop.
Okay.
There's not a standard protocol for rabies vaccines in people.
Okay.
So I get my titers done every year or so, and 29, I don't know, no, 32 years later, I've never needed a booster. So apparently I'm good now. I'm protected for the rest of my life. That's what their immunologist is saying. But the problem is like we'll have people come to the clinic and say, "Hey, we worry about over vaccinating," which is something you should be worried about. It's always something to consider. And although we utilize a 3-year rabies vaccine protocol based on AHA studies and a 3-year distemper parvo and 3-year upper respiratory for cats, et cetera, they still want to minimize it. Totally makes sense. Well, you can get, if you don't include the examination, you can get all the vaccines for 60 or $70 for a dog, let's say. Well, to do a distemper, parvo, and rabies, which is not all of them, but to do those 3 titers, it's about $400.
Oh, wow.
And it's only going to tell you that the dog is protected for rabies today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, most vets, including myself, will extend it for a year. You are good for a year. But people will say, well, I want it good for 3 years. No, that's not how it works. And the problem is if you try and travel and you say, well, I got a rabies titer, I didn't get the rabies vaccine, there are some countries that will not accept that.
Right.
Because you don't know. Just because you were protected for rabies yesterday doesn't mean you're protected today. You probably are.
Right.
So that's the issue. I believe, though, the future of veterinarian medicine is that you're going to bring your dog or your cat into the clinic. You're not even going to see a vet. They're going to draw blood. They're going to send it off for titers. You're going to come back 2 weeks later, see the veterinarian for your examination, and then he or she will say, okay, Fluffy needs this year only leptospirosis and distemper. We have the vaccine just for her.
Right.
And then we'll see you again in a year, and we're going to do it again. Eventually, those prices will go down.
Right.
And it'll become sort of, there'll be more knowledge. There'll be more sort of studies behind it. But so titers are excellent if you have the means, the financial means to do it. It's very, 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 very commonly done. But it's not what everyone thinks it is.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot of, I think, newer information that's coming out with it, or maybe it's just new to me because, again, I'm not a vet. But I've been titering my dogs for the past 3 years and haven't need to have any more vaccinations. And I feel like obviously that 3-year rule is kind of standard, which is why we do 1 year or 3-year rabies and different things like that. So we're coming up on our 4th year of doing the titers, and I think I'm super interested in knowing what those antibody levels look like. But it's something that I prefer to titer my dogs, and as I'm calling different vets and asking, hey, do you do titers, the front desk staff sometimes is like, I don't know what a titer is. Like, I feel like it's just that unpracticed, at least here in the United States. And then of course you have, like you said, a really big price tag with it. Number one, because I think it's not a common service. Number two, there's a very small amount of locations that will actually have the labs to do the test, so then you have to pay for the shipping, and then you have to pay for them to do the test, and then so there's just a couple of different layers of cost to that. I've been trying to figure out a way in my business to offer titer clinics, whether I'm partnering up with other veterinarians, and like this is just a central location so people can come. And in my research of how can I make this work, A&M is actually offering titer testing for $25, and I'm like, what? That's nuts. And so I reached out to them, and I even asked, like, how, like, is this true, $25? Because most of the price tags that I see, especially when you're just looking at one of the other places here in the United States is Kansas State University does a lot of the titer testing, but hundreds of dollars, like at least $250. And so I emailed them, and I'm like, are you missing a zero in there somewhere? Like, you have a typo on your website. And they're like, no, if you can get it here to us, if you can mail it to us, we'll run all the tests for $25 and, give you the results back. And I thought that was pretty interesting. So I'm kind of already seeing trends that are moving towards it being maybe not a standard practice, but something that's a little bit more accessible to people, which I really hope continues to happen because, yes, titer testing, in my experience, has been more expensive for sure.
Yeah, and I wonder if A&M might be doing some large scale studies.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Oh, these how many of these animals are protected, which bravo if that's what they're doing.
Hmm.
You'd mentioned Kansas State, so we need if we're doing a rabies titer, if you come to my clinic and you want your dog to have a rabies titer done, I'm going to say, well, is it just for vaccine protection or is it for travel? If
Mm-hmm.
it's just for vaccine protection, we send it to the local laboratory.
Okay.
If travel and the country, you're going to the UK, let's say, and they require a titer. It has to go to Kansas State.
Oh.
And Kansas, the technique, I don't know the specifics. I don't care to find out. I don't have the time. Back to that original question. But Kansas State has a technique that is so accurate, and they will give you an actual like ratio number or antibody protection number, and you have to be above a certain number. It's not just a yes, the dog is protected or no. It's how much protection is there. And for when it comes to travel, you need that Kansas State test level. So there's titers, and then there's capital T titers. Uh, and you're paying for that capital letter. So that is a factor as well. Is why are you getting the titer? Is it for your own and your pet's value, or is it for some sort of travel requirement? There's two very very specifically different tests that are done for that.
Very interesting. I did not know that whatsoever. And so now I'm like, does my other vet know that? Because she was charging me a really heavy penny. So now I'm wondering if I was getting that capital T when I didn't need it. Because it just
Yeah,
nuts.
or look, I mean, there's no way we can do it for $25.
No, no, for sure.
And that's even American. I mean, that's like $40 Canadian, like $2,000. Notice almost. But yeah, I mean, A&M may, they may have the laboratory there, and data is important. So I
Yeah,
think they're probably doing studies. Which, if that's the case, that's fantastic.
that's super cool, right? Cool, cool. Alrighty. Well, I think the last thing that I want to close out with, you kind of mentioned your wildlife travels. So, kind of, I don't know, can you give us at least one cool, fun story about something that you recently did where you were helping out in the wildlife?
One, oh, just one.
I know, pick one.
Uh, I love telling the story about the deer that myself and Lachlan, the vet from Australia, discovered in Poland. So I had gone to the Polish-Ukraine border 3 years ago, only a couple of weeks into the start of the Ukraine-Russia war. People were leaving Ukraine, obviously, to get away from the violence, and they were having trouble getting into Poland and then going to other countries if they had pets with them. Either the pets were injured, sick, or they didn't, for obvious reasons, they didn't think about bringing vaccine records, and
Right,
Poland wasn't about to let animals in without a rabies vaccine. So
right.
I was able to go to the border and help these refugees seek safety by helping their pets. So it was very very cool. But there was a quiet day. We're working with this rescue, and Dr. Laughlin's a vet from Australia, who like me is just this cowboy that likes to adventure and does things in the last minute without really thinking about it. And he was there to volunteer, and we went for a hike. And we're coming up. There's this hill on our right side, through the trees, and he sees these wooden structures, these towers. And he goes, "What do you think those are?" And I said, "Well, those are hunting towers. Like people sit up there, they drink beer, and they shoot animals that are crossing the field." And he says, "What do you think they're hunting?" I'm like, "Oh, I mean, boar, deer." And he goes, "Well, you don't reckon there's actually deer here, are you?" And then I turn, I go, "Oh my God, there's one right there." And this deer had its horns, its antlers trapped around this rope that had been set across, almost like a rope fence, a single line set across the field. I think it was there to trap the deer, and then eventually the hunter comes and shoots it.
Oh,
Well, this deer had like it was just wrapped, and it was spinning and it was bucking and it was freaking out. And I do wildlife work, so I know this thing's going through a condition called rhabdomyolysis, where the muscles are starting to break down from all the stress.
Wow.
Uh, Deer have this condition called capture myopathy, where the stress of being captured or being contained can literally kill them. It can cause organ failure from all the adrenalines that kick in, and epinephrine and norepinephrine. So I'm like, there's these right there. And so this guy slaps me on the shoulder and he's like, time to be a hero, mate. Let's go see it. And I was like, all right, let's. And he really does talk like that. They really do say mate all the time. And I'm like, okay, let's sit back for a second. I'm 10 years older than Lachlan, so I've got a little bit more gray hairs and more injuries. So I'm like, all right, let's strategize this for just a second. How are we going to do this? He goes, easy. Let's just tackle it, mate. And I was just like, what? And he literally goes, I'm like, all right, there ends our strategy session. We quickly put the cameras down because, nothing happens unless you can record it. So we had a little GoPro set up and whatnot. And I grabbed the rope and I'm pulling this thing closer and it's spinning, doing circles and kicking and bucking. And he literally leaps and grabs this thing by the base of the antlers. It spins and slams him into the ground, and he doesn't let go.
Oh God.
So the thing lifts him back up. He's like being launched in the air, riding him through the air kind of thing. And then with me, I have a judo background. I'm a black belt in judo. And judo, we like to do things the lazy way. We like to use momentum and knock things over without actually having to work. So I think my judo kicked in because as this thing came near me, I sort of sensed this imbalance and I literally put my shoulder into it and it dropped to the ground. We quickly held it down. I covered its face with my hoodie because that, if you can get them that they can't see, they start to calm down. It took us about 10 minutes to unwrap this rope, and then finally it took off. It didn't turn around. It didn't say thank you. Kicked me in the hand, knocked my phone out of my hand. All these crazy things, but it was this. There were all these things that the funny part is there were all these things that could have gone wrong where we wouldn't have even have been there.
Right.
We weren't supposed to hike that morning. We weren't supposed to go to that field. We just happened to see this guy 10 minutes before he was probably going to die. There were vultures overhead, like all these, and it was two veterinarians that are crazy enough to tackle the deer. One of them knew enough to cover its eyes, like all these different things. By far it was one of the most exciting rescues we ever did. There's a great little YouTube video about it on my channel or on my Instagram. So it did actually happen exactly that way. It was pretty crazy.
How long did it take you guys to recover, from that moment? The dude trots off, right? Doesn't look back, doesn't say thank you, which I was actually going to ask. Did you feel like a moment of where you're like, no, there was absolutely none of that. There was no gratitude. But how long did y'all sit there and catch your breath for?
I mean, he was panting a lot less than I was. He was younger, better shape than me at
I
the
love
time.
the honesty.
No, I mean, once we were pretty amped up all day. Like we were so excited, and it's what we want to do. I mean, I love doing the surgery, and I love doing the medicine,
Yeah.
and I can do. I've done some pretty crazy rescues, from elevated heights and rappelling down into things and going down deep into caves and all this cool stuff. But this was just like primitive.
Right.
You just got to grab them and hold them down and unravel it, and off it goes.
You literally grabbed life by the horns that day. Yeah.
Yeah, there are probably some pissed off hunters afterwards going, "What the hell happened to our rope?" But they shouldn't be hunting anyways. Certainly not in that method.
No way. Yeah. Buddy, that's what the blind is for. You're supposed to have all the time in the world to sit up in the blind and, if
Yep.
you're going to shoot an animal unsuspecting, fast, quick, not having them struggle in a trap for God knows how long. And then they would have died of unnatural causes, I guess, at that point. And then it's wasted meat either way. So,
Yeah, yeah, it would have been a horrible end for that deer for sure.
Yeah, I'm from Texas, so hunting is definitely something that is common down here, and I'm not against hunting by any means. I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of really great beneficial things for the ecosystem, but there is a right way to do that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I talked at the beginning about being a pescatarian. I would eat hunted meat. I just won't eat factory farmed meat. I would,
Understood, yeah.
wild animal, I'd rather take a bullet to the brain or to the heart than be slowly ripped apart by a couple of wolves.
Yeah,
Uh, Not that I blame the wolves. They're doing what they're meant to do. But yeah, this was a very lazy, stupid way of doing it.
I hear you for sure. Well, I think that was the best way for us to end today's episode with a super exciting story. I'm going to go find that YouTube clip, and if I do, I'm going to pop it in the show notes for everyone to see that, because that sounds like a mighty fun clip to watch. Dr. Cliff, thank you so much for being with me today and spending some time throughout your very, very busy schedule. We had to schedule this, I think, 3 weeks out in advance, just because you're all over the place doing amazing work.
All
I
over.
appreciate you and your conversation and your open-mindedness too, I think, to having a conversation with someone like me who's a little bit more on the holistic side. So I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. It was fun having. All you have to do to find that video, it's just youtube.com/drcliff.
Okay. But
Dr.
isn't that your whole channel? That's going to take me to your whole
That's my
channel.
whole channel, and
Yeah.
I think that video is the intro. Like it's like the
Like the
when you go there, there's one video
image.
that's like the focus.
Uh-huh.
Like, welcome to the channel. This is
Here's this crazy ass video.
pretty sure it's that one, but otherwise, if you do that and just you'll find it. It's pretty
Okay.
simple. Yeah.
I'm totally going to go watch it right now. That sounds exciting.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. You have a great day.
All
Bye,
right, cheers.
everyone. We'll catch you guys on the next episode. Now, that might be the end of the episode, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. Follow us on social media. I'd love to connect with you. We have quite a few social media platforms. For nutrition and holistic pet care tips, follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Steph the Pro Dog Mom. You can find fun training tips on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram at Pup and Away SA. If you're in San Antonio and you want to bring your dog to us for boarding, training, socialization, and nutrition, come find us. But if you're not in San Antonio, we do training and nutrition sessions virtually. Yes, they can be just as effective, I promise. Please rate, review, and subscribe to my podcast on whatever platform you listen on, and please, please, please share with a friend. The positive reinforcement of knowing people actually listen to this and find it valuable helps motivate me to keep on recording. We'll see you guys at the next episode.